I'm what you might call a fitness freak. I never miss a single day of morning walks if I'm not down with any sickness. I take my dog Buzzo with me on my morning walks. Buzzo is a golden-colored Cocker Spaniel. Those who own dogs are quite aware of the friendliness of this certain breed. He's a very playful and fun-loving dog, and he loved to run. Generally, I was used to driving to the city park for a jog, but recently the place started to get really crowded, and I prefer a quiet start to my mornings. So I started to go to another park located on the outskirts of the city. Mostly in the mornings, the park remained completely empty. It was a foggy winter morning when I started from my house at 5:30 a.m. Buzzo was sitting in the back seat and enjoying the highway ride. At around 6, we reached the park. The park was surrounded by wooden fences. Due to poor maintenance, the fence was broken in a few places. At the end of the park, one could see hiking trails leading to deep woods. I parked my car and got down with Buzzo. I took off his leash and we started to run. Needless to say, it was really cold at that time, so we were running as fast as we could. Buzzo and I often ran circles covering the entire park. After 10 minutes of running like that, my body started to warm up. Dark clouds hid the sky. The dense woods standing at the end of the park fascinated me. The ambiance was in complete silence. I could only hear the wind. Surprisingly, not a single bird was chirping that day. It made me feel as if we were the only living thing out there. Buzzo was running in front of me when he suddenly picked up a broken twig and came rushing towards me. He liked to play catch, so I took the twig from his mouth and threw it. "There you go, boy." He ran and picked it up again. We were having a fun time on our own. It was probably the third time I threw the twig, but surprisingly, Buzzo didn't pay attention to that. Instead, he started to bark looking at the end of the park. "What? What is it, boy?" He was barking looking at those dense woods. At first, I thought he might have seen some wild animal. I tried to look, but the fog was obstructing my view. I cheered him up to go and get the twig back, but he was reluctant to move from his position. He kept barking as if something out there had threatened his existence. Out of options, I had to walk towards the end of the park to pick up the twig. As I started walking, Buzzo eventually followed me. I bent to pick it up from the ground when Buzzo started to growl in a very weird way. Now, as I mentioned earlier, he's a very calm and cheerful dog. I've never seen him behave like this. He was growling like he was ready to attack something hiding in the woods. I looked at those woods but didn't see anything. But you know how people say animals can sense danger way before humans. I wish I had returned home right that moment, taking this hint from Buzzo, but unfortunately I didn't, and I still regret that decision. I was going to ignore this when suddenly I heard footsteps coming from the woods. It felt like someone was walking on dry leaves. Buzzo barked one more time, and I thought there might be a coyote or a deer in the woods. "Shut up, Buzzo. There's nothing out there. Come on, let's run 2 more laps and then we'll go home." I started to run again. The more I ran, I heard Buzzo barking constantly. I thought he would catch up eventually, so I didn't look back. Buzzo's bark started to fade away, and after some point, he stopped. "Last lap, boy," I said, and increased my speed thinking Buzzo will chase me. He liked to play with me this way, so I was expecting him to run ahead, but that didn't happen. I stopped and turned back. I found myself standing in that foggy park alone. Buzzo was nowhere to be found. "Buzzo! Buzzo, where are you, boy?" I kept calling him, but I didn't hear a single bark. Something in the back of my mind told me Buzzo was in danger, and right at that moment, I heard a squeaking sound that dogs make when they're in pain. "Buzzo!" I rushed to the place where I last saw him. The twig that we were playing catch with was lying on the ground in the same untouched manner. I started calling him helplessly while searching the park in a panic-stricken way. "Buzzo! Come here, boy! It's time to go home! Buzzo! Buzzo!" Suddenly, I heard a dog bark coming from the woods. "Buzzo! Thank God!" I immediately jumped the fence and started running into the woods. "Buzzo! Come, boy! Come on!" Again, the bark took place and I got sure Buzzo is hiding somewhere. Maybe he chased a squirrel into these woods. Buzzo! Buzzo! But I froze on the ground. My heart stopped in fear. What I saw next, I will never be able to forget. My beloved Buzzo was lying under a big oak tree. He was dead. Blood was all around him. His golden fur was now vicious red. He was lying dead, drenched in his blood. In his face. Oh my God. I can never wash off the sight from my mind. Someone stomped his small head with a rock. I was standing there like a statue, figuring out how to react when I heard a dog bark right behind me. It was the same bark I heard a few seconds ago, thinking it was Buzzo. But Buzzo's dead. Then who's barking behind me? I slowly turned around. The blood in my veins was turning to ice. I was sweating in fear, just about to cry. As I looked behind me, I saw a scary-looking man standing near a tree and smiling at me. There was something in his grin that made me feel disgusted and terrified at the same time. I felt like someone pushed me into a garbage pit, and all I could see and smell is the rotten dirt around me. The man then stopped grinning and barked like a dog. His bark was so authentic that you could never identify it was coming from a human being. Just then, my eyes went to his hand, and I saw a bloody rock. I had no doubt that he crushed Buzzo's head with that. He then crouched on the ground, sitting like a four-legged animal, and then barked for one last time, and started to run towards me like a dog at full speed. I screamed and ran for my life. I fell on the ground while jumping the fence and hurt my ankle, but somehow I picked myself up and sprinted towards my car. I don't know how I drove home that day. I went to the cops the next day and told them everything. After hearing what happened to me and my poor dog, a cop said, "You're not the first person to report about such an incident in that park. We've gotten many complaints from people who went to walk their pet or go for a jog like you, and found them dead in those woods under mysterious circumstances. They all told us a vicious-looking madman killed their pets and chased them like a maniac. Even though we searched the park, we didn't find any suspect. Also, the woods are so deep, it was almost impossible to search the entire area with a well-equipped task force." I knew the cops aren't going to invest much effort into this matter, but every night I wake up in my sleep, seeing the most horrifying dream, where my poor Buzzo is lying dead on the ground, covered in blood, and that maniac sitting next to his corpse, eating his raw flesh like a demon from hell. Before starting the story, I would suggest you guys to go subscribe to the channel. It turns out that most of you guys who watch me aren't actually subscribed. So, if you like the content and want to support the channel, go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. My dad is definitely hiding something from me. Every morning when I wake up and go downstairs, I see him washing his hands vigorously, as if he's trying really hard to get them clean. My dad and I are really close. I don't have many friends. We used to live in a town, but after my mom's death, our life changed. I tried to socialize to distract my mind from this unfortunate event, but everyone I made friends with either disappeared or died under mysterious circumstances. After that, my dad bought this new house on the outskirts, and since then it's just been the two of us. I'm now used to this loneliness, because don't know why my dad doesn't take it nicely when I try to talk to others. He even warned me one day that if I try to make contact with others, he'll lock me in my room. But trust me, he's a really nice guy. I know he means no harm to me, he just cares about me too much, and doesn't want to lose her darling daughter. But with more time passing, a gut feeling is telling me that he's hiding something very sinister from me. My dad wakes up very early and leaves for his morning walks. He likes nature and jogs almost for an hour. I, on the other hand, am mostly asleep at that time. I wake up exactly when he returns home from his morning walks. As soon as he gets home, he goes to the kitchen sink and starts washing his hands. This is one of his habits, but this never made me feel weird until this morning. Today when I woke up and went downstairs, I noticed red stains on his hand. I don't know why, but I felt he had drops of blood on his hands. I'm starting to doubt him now. Why did he have blood on his hand? I wanted to ask him, but I couldn't gather the courage to do so. After washing them off, he made some delicious breakfast. I was surprised to see him behave as nothing happened, but I know he's doing something really bad in the name of those early morning walks. My suspicion grew stronger this evening. I was watching TV with my dad sitting in the living room when the news flashed. A truck driver was found dead near the Spring County woods. Cops are suspecting he was murdered in a very brutal way. Someone stabbed him to death and then snatched out his eyes. His truck was found at the highway near the woods. The forensic team said that the time of his death falls between 4 to 5 o'clock a.m. No one has the slightest idea why he went to the woods to stop his car at that hour. Did someone lure him into the woods to murder him that way? No one knows yet, but the police department is investigating on. Before I could see the entire news, my dad changed the channel as if it was making him nervous. I don't know what was going on inside his head. I'm starting to become scared of him now. My father didn't go for his morning walk today. I heard sirens of cop cars patrolling this entire area. I don't think my father can harm anyone. And why is he so scared to go out after this murder? I've decided to confront my dad today. The silence is killing me. Dad? You didn't go out for your morning walk today? Nope. But why? What does that have to do with you? Go eat your breakfast. No, I was just thinking it was a bit weird. That's why I asked. What's weird? You missed your morning walk. You never miss your morning walk. Molly, is there something you want to tell me? I noticed his face turning pale as he asked me this question. I don't know why my questions were making him so nervous. His entire behavior was changed after this murder was reported. Dad, I've been meaning to ask you something for a long time now, but I'm scared how you'll react. Are you scared of me, Molly? The way he asked me this, I realized how much my words shocked him. I mean, I am his world. He had made sure I was always under his care and love. I'm sure he could never believe that his loving daughter could ever suspect him. But I knew that I had to confront him now. The time has come because I've had enough. I wanted to ask him how Mom fell from the stairs. I wanted to ask him how my 3 friends went missing, and 2 were later found dead. 1 choked to death in the town dumpster, and the other drowned in the local lake. I wanted to ask what happened to my other friend. Where is he? Is he alive, or is he dead too? But before I could get all my answers, our doorbell rang. I noticed my dad's eyes getting wider in an unknown fear. He slowly walked to the door and opened it. A man dressed in formal was standing at our doorstep. He had a sharp-looking face with scanning eyes. Hello, sir. I'm Detective Branch. I'm working with the police department. We're interviewing everyone in the area for the gruesome murder of the truck driver. May I ask you some questions? Go to your room. Oh, no. Let her be here, too. Maybe she can also tell us something useful. Come on, young lady. Let's sit down and talk. I've never seen my dad more scared than at this moment. Something in my heart kept telling me that my dad knows things that he doesn't want to reveal. Detective Branch sat down on the couch in our living room. My dad sat beside him, and I sat down on a chair next to him. My heart was beating fast now. He looked at my dad and said, So how long have you been living here? 6 months. I see. How many members are there in your family? Just me and my daughter. And your wife? She died 6 months back. Oh, I'm sorry. If you don't mind me asking, how did she die? She fell down some stairs. Another unnatural death then. I see. What do you mean by that, detective? I could see my dad getting impatient and angry with this man. The detective smiled and looked at me. You're Molly, right? How do you know my name? I went to your school. My school? Why? Molly, do you know what happened to your friends? Yeah, they died, and one of them disappeared. Did the same person who killed the truck driver kill my friends as well? Yes, I'm afraid so. But I have even more scary news for you. What? What is it? You know who's doing all this, Molly. don't you?" "What? What do you mean? Why would I—" "Dad, what is he trying to say?" I could feel my veins popping out in fury, and my head throbbing in terrible pain. My dad got up and screamed, "Go to your room, Molly! And you, get the hell out of my house! We don't know anything about these murders!" "Come on, Mr. Johnson. How long will you act like a fool and pretend nothing is happening? I've checked the CCTV footage of the night the truck driver got murdered. I've seen who stopped his truck and lured him into the woods." Their argument was heating up. Meanwhile, I couldn't bear this excruciating pain in my head. I jumped from my seat, screaming at the top of my lungs, and then everything went black. When I woke up, I saw the entire house was silent. My father was dragging something away. As my vision adjusted, I saw he was dragging the bloody corpse of the detective branch into our basement. He had no eyes, just like the truck driver. "Molly, you're awake. Go wash your hands now. We don't have much time. We have to leave right now." As I looked at my hands, I saw it was red with fresh blood, and I was holding something in my fist. I slowly opened it, and there they were, a pair of torn-out eyes lying in my hand. I calmed down and uttered to myself, "Don't worry, Molly. Dad is going to take care of you. He always does. He did after Mom died. He did after Cindy was found in the dumpster. He did after Joanna was drowned in the lake. He did when Jason was pushed from the cliff. And he did after the truck driver was stabbed. He will do it this time as well." I come from a small town, and people in the small town pay a lot of attention to ritual and curses, unlike others. It's not like they see ghosts everywhere, but lots of them seriously believed in the existence of the supernatural. I was in high school when this incident happened. It's been a long time since I moved out, but whenever I meet my high school friends, the memory of this incident revisits us again and again. There lived an old couple in our town. I don't recall their first names, but everyone called them Mr. and Mrs. Clayton. They didn't have any children. Everyone in town loved them for their kind and sweet nature. They were always seen together no matter where they went. I mean, they were the kind of love story where two lovers promise to grow old together. I still remember my first high school girlfriend asking me whether I love her like Mr. Clayton loves Mrs. Clayton. Well, that's the reason why she broke up, because instead of saying yes, I replied, "What bullshit is that?" I know. It was pretty insensitive of me, but I was young back then, and I also didn't feel that kind of connection with her. I still haven't felt like that for anyone. Maybe this is why I'm still single. Anyways, let's get back to the story. So, the Claytons were having their happily ever after time until one day Mrs. Clayton died in her sleep. The town people shook in sadness, but the one who got crushed under grief was Mr. Clayton. I still remember the day we attended Mrs. Clayton's funeral. It was an open casket. Mr. Clayton didn't talk to anyone, or even notice people around him. He just sat near her coffin and kept staring at her lifeless body. Then, Mrs. Clayton was taken and buried in our local graveyard. The priest uttered his prayer, and everyone started to throw soil over her coffin. Out of nowhere, Mr. Clayton jumped into her grave and started sobbing like a child. This scene broke everyone's heart in our town, and people somehow managed to take Mr. Clayton away. After his wife's sudden demise, Mr. Clayton changed into a completely different person. He didn't talk to anyone, barely came out of the house. Every town person regularly went to his house to check on him, but with more passing time, people went on with their own lives. Until one day a weird incident happened. I was playing football in the high school team, so I had to maintain an athletic routine. My coach instructed me to go for early morning walks to increase my stamina. I started waking up early right after dawn and went for a long run. Following the dusty countryside, I ran to the high road and then came back home, taking a shortcut right beside the local cemetery. It was a Monday morning and the sun hadn't risen yet, hence there was darkness around. But it wasn't pitch black, and the pale moonlight was still showing the way. I was coming back from the highway. My heartbeat was fast and I was losing breath, so I was jogging more casually. As I took the shortcut right across the cemetery, I heard a crying voice. I thought that maybe someone was in trouble and might need my help, so I stopped and started to look around. I was searching here and there, trying to find a person in a helpless situation, when my eyes went to the cemetery. The entire graveyard was visible from the road. In that half-light, half-dark situation, I saw a figure sitting near a tombstone and weeping in a squeaky voice. As I looked closer, I saw it was a woman dressed in a white gown sitting under a tombstone facing her back to me. It took me a moment to realize she was sitting at the grave of Mrs. Clayton. And not just that, she was wearing the same exact gown that Mrs. Clayton's body was dressed in. What the hell? The woman immediately turned around, and her face wasn't like any human being. Her face was extremely white, and her lips were red and smudged, like someone mutilated her face. I've never seen anything scarier than that. She then got up and started to laugh in the most freaking way possible. Believe me when I say this, I thought my heart was going to explode in fear. My morning walk turned into a run for my life. After that day, many weird incidents started to happen in our local cemetery and the area around it. These incidents usually occurred during dawn. A rumor started to spread that Mrs. Clayton's spirit is now haunting our town. One day, our pastor was going to the church to ring the morning bell when Mrs. Clayton's ghost jumped on him from a nearby tree. He screamed with the sudden turn of event and fainted on the ground. The townspeople told Mr. Clayton to arrange a small prayer session asking for peace for her soul. Some even told him to go to an exorcist, but he stopped interacting with anyone on this matter. I heard my neighbors telling my parents that Mr. Clayton doesn't want to do anything about it because he's happy to know Mrs. Clayton has come back from the dead. People stopped going to the cemetery after dark. A week passed by and the entire town was terrorized with these supernatural occurrences. But at that time, everyone was too scared to go and look for themselves, even our pastor. The mayor called for a community meeting and announced that they're going to take this matter to the Covenant next town and perform an exorcism. The day the exorcism was about to take place, something unexpected happened. Our coach was a strong and highly practical man. He called for an early morning practice that day. As we all gathered in the school playground, he said, "Boys, we'll go for a run to warm up. Everyone finish your lunges. We'll start in 5 minutes." It was around 4 a.m. and we were a group of 4 people, including our coach. The finals were hanging around the corner, and the coach called for a special practice session with some selected players. So we started the morning run to warm ourselves up. We were running on the empty town streets. The sun hadn't come up yet, so it was mostly dark. We came near the church road when the coach took the road that went across the cemetery. "But coach, we shouldn't go near the cemetery at this time," Danielle said in a fearful voice. I got worried about the events happening there. "Shut up! There's no such thing as ghosts. Come on, follow me." We had to follow Coach. My heart started to beat fast again. I knew something is going to happen any minute now. We were about to cross the cemetery just when a scream took place. Everyone stopped and looked around. Danielle shouted, "Oh my God, she's coming to get us now!" We heard running footsteps behind us, and we all turned around at once. We saw Mrs. Clayton's ghost dressed in the same white gown, rushing towards us at full speed. Everyone was so shocked and scared at the same moment that we all forgot to move. She laughed while running like a maniac. She came really close and jumped on our coach. We all gasped seeing this horrible thing, but the coach suddenly grabbed her neck and gave a huge punch on her nose. Mrs. Clayton fell on the ground bleeding to death, and a scream came out of her mouth. But this time, the scream was of a man. Her wig fell off, and the sunlight touched us right at that moment. As soon as the surrounding became clear, we discovered a sad truth. It wasn't Mrs. Clayton. Rather, it was her husband. It was he who terrorized the townspeople, dressed in his wife's gown and putting her makeup on his face. No doubt her death mentally deranged him, but every individual handles grief in their distinctive way. After staying in the hospital to recover from that injury, Mr. Clayton was sent to a mental institution for better care and treatment. Our coach was no doubt the bravest man I have ever met in my life. He not only saved Mr. Clayton from going completely mad that day, but also saved the townspeople from an unknown fear that was eating them alive.